They were chanting Jai Jai Shankar Jagat Guru Har Har Shankar. What is it?
Pahi
Guru. Guru is a word. Guru is a Sambodhana Prathama, addressing, hey Guru, Jaya Jaya Shankar, hey Shankar, hey Guru. So, may there be victory for you, may there be victory for you, may you shine. Har Har Shankar. Har is of course Lord Shiva. Hey Shankar, Pahi. Pahi means please protect me. Hey Guru, please protect me. Oh, she's put on there. Take a picture.
Yeah.
That's what I know.
She looks
Very
very
pretty.
Very pretty.
Come little closer. Come little closer. You're a great photographer. Not from that distance. Come a little closer.
They have
Use
Zoom
very
in
nice,
it.
yeah.
They do Zoom it.
Smile.
Good. Very good. The fourth vibhakti of the word Guru is Gurave. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. And so, depends on what the usage is, accordingly that vibhakti is utilized.
Swamiji, my question is, we always aim, even after we say the whole, anything we aim with
Namaskar.
yeah, always we start
To see, there are 16 steps to a puja, and the last is Namaskar. So, to whichever deity we are performing puja, you start with Dhyanam, Avahanam, Asanam, Padyam, Arghya, Achmaniya, Snanam, and then Vastra, Alankara, etc., etc., and then Pushpam, Dhupa, Deepa, Naivedya, and then Karpura Aradhanam, Karpura Nirajanam, Pradakshanam, Namaskar. Sometimes after Namaskar there is also Prarthana. So that's the Upachara. Like you are receiving a revered guest in your home, that's how we do the puja of the Devata also. So whatever offerings we normally make, we make to the Devata also.
But we always end with Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah.
Oh, that is our, yeah. We end everything with Om Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namah. Offering our Namaskar to Guru.
Even after Bhagavan, after all that, Guru is the last word.
Yeah,
What
yeah, for us, yes, right. We begin with the Guru also. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namah. And then you start. And then end also with that. So anybody has any questions?
Swamiji, since we are doing this and there are some children as well, we usually talk about Guru Purnima, what is the significance? Maybe,
Guru Purnima.
why we do?
It is Purnima means the full moon. It is also called Vyasa Purnima, in fact. That's the day Veda Vyasa appeared on this earth, and so it's called Vyasa Purnima, and that is celebrated as Guru Purnima. So Veda Vyasa represents the Guru, and so that way Veda Vyasa is called Veda Vyasa because he arranged the Vedas, So Vedas were there, of course. He did not write the Vedas or create the Vedas. He arranged them into Yugdhara Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Saraveda. So therefore he is called Vyasa, Veda Vyasa. And he is supposed to be the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. About Veda Vyasa it is said, Achatur Vadano Brahma, Vivahura Paro Hari, पानी चाहिए
It's here. Swamiji, we have.
That'll be fine. Water will be good.
We'll go.
It goes into echo.
That's the echo.
Yeah. Everybody able to hear in the back?
They can hear. You can. Some people can move
You can
forward.
move
There's a lot of space here. And
Maybe you can put it in front. अचतुर्वदनो ब्रह्मा द्विबाहुरपरो हरिः अभाललोचन शंभुः भगवान बादरायण. He is Brahma. So he is equated to Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesha. A Chaturvadano Brahma. Brahma has 4 heads. So this is it, Brahma without the 4 heads. With Brahma with 1 head. A Chaturvadana. Not Chaturvadana, not 4 heads. So Brahma without the 4 heads. Vivahura Paro Hari, he is Hari or Narayana. Narayana has 4 hands, but he is Narayana with 2 hands. Abhalochana Shambhu. Shambhu has 3 eyes, but this is eye without the 3rd eye. So he is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. Bhagavan Badarayana. So that way he is Badarayana also because he performed his tapasya in the kshetra of Badari. He lived there with performing penance. Therefore, in the Badari kshetra, otherwise called Badarayana. He was born on an island that is called Dvaipayana. He was dark in his color, so it's called Krishna. So his name was Krishna Dvaipayana. And he's called Vyasa because of arranging the Vedas. He's called Badarayana because he lived in the Badari Kshetra and performed the Tapasya. And Veda Vyasa is credited with having composed all the Puranas, all the 18 Puranas are supposed to be composed by Veda Vyasa. Badarayana has composed the Brahma Sutras. But most well known he is on account of his composition of Mahabharata. Vyasa, Veda Vyasa is most well known for his composition of Mahabharata. It is the largest poem of the world, having 100,000 couplets, 100,000 verses. And so that was his magnum opus. And so there is nobody like him. And that's the reason why his birthday is celebrated as the day of Guru. So it's a teacher's day for us. Like Mother's Day, Father's Day, but Teacher's Day. It's Guru Purnima. And we were saying last night how we are indebted to many beings, and one of them is our indebtedness to Guru. Because the Guru and all the sages have given us this knowledge, and therefore we are highly indebted to them for having given us the knowledge. So to express our gratitude for what all we have received from the Guru, to express the gratitude to the purpose of this ceremony, to show our gratitude. Guru Purnima. He yesterday read one line of that verse. Drishtanto neva drishtaha tribhuna jathare sadguru jnanadatuhu. Adi Shankaracharya also is well known, and he has written a work called the Shatashloki. In the invocation, he begins the prayer to his Guru in that Shatashloki. Shatashloki is a composition of 100 verses, which is a very beautiful composition of Vedanta. And is an invocation to the Guru. He says, Drishtanto neva drishtaha tribhuna jathare Sadguru Jnanadatu. Jnanadatu Sadguru Dushtantah Tribhuna Jashare Naiva Dushtah. So he said, I want to describe my Sadguru. Who is Sadguru? The one who has given the knowledge of Guru. Guru is the word, is made up of these two letters, Gu and Ru. And there is a verse which says, Gukaras Tundhakaro Vai, Rukaras Tandivartakaha, Andhakar Nirodhitvat, Guru Rityabhidhiyate. The letter Gu stands for Andhakar. Gu Samvarane. Letter Ru stands for that which removes Andhakara, meaning the light. So Andhakara Nirodhitvat, Guru iti Abhidhiyate, because the Guru dispels the darkness of ignorance from the heart of the disciple, that is called Guru. And so basically Guru's job is to remove the darkness of ignorance. Sadguru. Sadguru is the one who has removed the ignorance with reference to Sat. Sat means the existence, means truth. So one who has removed my ignorance with reference to truth, with reference to self, with reference to reality. And that's the highest knowledge. Knowledge, gaining which nothing remains to be known. Knowledge, gaining which there is complete satisfaction in life. Because, as Vedanta explains to us, the primary problem in life is ignorance, that we do not know ourselves truly, and that because of that ignorance we have the false notions about ourselves, and therefore all our sorrow is only because of ignorance. So, removal of sorrow takes place by removal of ignorance. And therefore Sadguru. So Guru, who gives me the knowledge of the self, he, by enlightening me with the nature of knowledge of nature of myself, he removes all the sorrow, liberates me from the sorrow, thus I become liberated. Mukta. So Sadguru. So Shankaracharya ji wanted to praise his Guru. And how do you praise? You praise by giving a drishtanta or illustration. So says, I looked in all the three worlds. Our concept of the universe is three worlds. This world, the intermediate world, and the heaven. Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha. These three make up the whole world, the whole universe. So he said, I looked in the whole universe. Tribhuvana Jatare. In the stomach of all the three worlds I looked. But then I could not find a single illustration to compare my Guru with. There is nothing that can compare with my Guru. So somebody said, well, how about a philosopher's stone? You know what a philosopher's stone does is, if iron touches philosopher's stone, then iron turns into gold. That's called parasmani. And so in English they call it philosopher's stone. If it touches iron, the iron converts into gold. How about that? That is the most wonderful thing. So he says, Sparshachetradnavaktaha sarnayati yadaho swarnatam ashmasaram. Says, yes, this philosopher's stone is definitely great because it converts the iron into gold. It still is not satisfactory. Naspashatvam tathapi. But a philosopher's stone also cannot convert iron into philosopher's stone. Philosopher's stone can convert iron into gold, but cannot create another philosopher's stone. Naspashatvam tathapi. Sita Charana Yoge Sadguru Sviya Shishye Swiyam Samyam Vidhatte. But Sadguru, what does he do to those disciples who are surrendered to his feet? In fact, makes them like himself. So Guru creates another Guru. Every Guru also at one time was a disciple. And so Guru creates a Guru. In that sense, even a philosopher's stone, which is the best in converting also, is not adequate to compare with my Guru. Sita Charana Yoge Sadguru Sviya Shishye Swiyam Samyam Vidhatte. Swiyam Samyam Vidhatte. He makes them similar to them. Therefore, he becomes incomparable. The Sadguru, meaning particularly Guru, he gives us self-knowledge, is incomparable. So what can we do? We can only praise him. That's all we can do. We can worship him. So the way To express our gratitude is by praising him, by worshipping him. And therefore on the day of the Guru Purnima, it is customary to worship the Guru, to express our gratitude. That is Guru Purnima.
Swamiji, how do you know that you have known the known?
How do you know that you know the Lord? Well, how do you know that you have known, suppose there is a flower. How do you know that you know the flower? Huh? No?
It fell on your lap.
Poor thing. You are the proof. Because knowledge is self-revealing, therefore, if you know something, you know that you have known it. Well, that is the reason why, as far as God is concerned, now the question is, what's the nature of God? This is what you learn from the scriptures. And so, depending upon what your concept of God is, like Mirabai would think that God is Lord Krishna. So when she has realization of God in the form of Sri Krishna, so she has realized. If you think that God is in the form of self, then if you see him as self or the consciousness, then you realize the God. So ultimate realization of God is as one's own self. So you know Ishvara as your own self, that is the ultimate realization. And you know it. Because basically what that knowledge does is, it gives you freedom. And you know whether you're happy, it gives you happiness. It gives you, so you know happiness is your own self. Freedom is your own self. And so that is self-revealing. So you know whether you are happy or not. When you become happy, you don't have to ask anybody. How do I know I'm happy? You know that you're happy. So if you're free, you know that you're free. That your consciousness, you see yourself as consciousness. But that knowledge releases you from all sorrow. It gives you total happiness. And that's why you know that. You see yourself that you know God.
Swamiji, kindly give us some practical tips to stay on the path of spiritual parenting for our kids.
The parenting of the kids.
Spiritual.
That's okay. Spiritual parenting, well, the best that we can do as far as our children are concerned is to give them good samskaras or good, values, good attitudes and good values. When it comes to spiritual growth, it will happen when the time comes. What we can do right now is to give them good attitudes and good values. So,
Is it okay? So
volume is okay, I think, yeah. I think everyone can hear now.
Yeah.
So we grew up with certain attitudes. In the olden days, every day in the householders used to perform 5 forms of puja or worship. Worshipping devatas, worshipping the parents and ancestors, worshipping the gurus or sages, taking care of the needy people in the society, and also taking care of the animals and plants and trees that are around us. So thus, this attitude of including others also in our life, that we do not become self-centered, that we should have others also should have place in our life, because we are the beneficiaries of what they do. Like the cow gives us milk, the trees give us oxygen, Other human beings like farmers, and all of them contribute something to our life. The devatas, like the sun and moon, they contribute to our life. The gurus and sages, by knowledge, they contribute in our life. The parents have contributed in our life. So, therefore we should know that we are the beneficiaries of a contribution of a number of elements. And all of these are divided into 5. And therefore it was customary to every day perform worship to these 5 entities. There will be Deva Pujanam. So there is an altar. In the olden days they were performing the fire rituals. But today we have altar in our home, we perform the puja. As far as the parents are concerned in their home, then we show the reverence and respect and take care of them. Take care of parents and elders. Taking care of also expressing our gratitude toward the teachers and sages by pursuing knowledge and by being helpful in passing on the knowledge, spreading the knowledge. Also showing concern to other needy members of the society. And also concern to the environment, consisting of plants and trees and other animals and insects. And if the parents show these things in their life, the teacher, the children also will learn. So best way to teach the children is by demonstrating in our own life. So these attitudes are in our life, then the children also will pick them up. So they will know attitude towards parents and elders. How my parents, many people tell Swamiji, my father, he served his father for 15 years. He served his mother for so many years. He did, so children know this. How their parents respected their parents and their elders. Then when they grow up, they will also respect their parents and elders. So, and the values of honesty, fairness, truthfulness, these values also. So this is what basically we can teach our children. The attitudes and values, which make a person a good person. The spirituality will come later on. But right now, being a good person, one who is a loving or kind person. So value for kindness, compassion, forgiveness. This we can teach our children. And you can tell them stories which illustrate all these values. Lots of stories are available. Just tell them the stories to illustrate these values and try to illustrate them in your life also. That's a big job, that's a big challenge. So raising children becomes a big challenge because children demand, that we live up to what we talk, walk the talk. So we say something, when don't do that, then they right away point out. And so it becomes a challenge to parents also to walk the talk. That's good, it's a challenge. So then parents also are required to grow, and that's the advantage of raising the children. If you enjoy them growing, and you also grow along with them.
Yes, Purnavati.
Yes, we have the children's classes going on. Sunday classes are there. Arsha Vidya Gurukulam has published very good literature called Purna Vidya in 10 volumes from the age 6 to age 15. Whatever a child requires, the material is there in those volumes. You can get them, those Purna Vidya, you can study themselves and teach your children. If your children can go to some Bal Vihar classes, well and good. Other you yourself can be their coach, as far as the religious training is concerned. So right now important thing is that they become religious people. Later on they will become spiritual people. Anybody else?
Swamiji, can you say something on organizing the Hindu Samaj, and not just for religious purposes, but for the Samaj itself?
Organizing Hindu Samaj? Lots of efforts are being made right now to make the Hindus aware of the present situation. Hindus are quite illiterate as far as Hinduism is concerned, unfortunately. because we do not have a formal system of communicating the religion to our children. In the olden generation, when they were growing up, the children used to learn from their own parents, and therefore the religion came into them. But today, even the parents also are very little informed as far as the religion is concerned. Not only we have limited information on religion, there are lots of misconception about the religion. And we are influenced by the Western education and Western society. And that Western society is always very critical of Hinduism also. So in fact our children also grow with being critical to Hinduism. So therefore Hindus are their worst enemies right now. You don't have to go out for seeking enemies, because worst critics are the Hindus themselves, who do not understand what Hinduism is. So in India also, all this media and so-called intellectuals, all of them, when at any opportunity, they always want to criticize Hinduism. And so number one, making Hindus aware of what the situation is, how Hindus are under Hinduism, under attack from on many fronts, from inside as well as outside. Like in the West, they seem to be bent upon destroying Hinduism as though, by converting on one hand in India, and secondly by denigrating or by criticizing Hinduism, by publishing a variety of books and things like that. So Hindus have to become aware of this, and have to become aware of what the religion talks about. They have to learn about Hinduism. And for that purpose also temples can be a good center of education. Temples should not remain merely centers of worship, which of course they are meant to be. They should also become the centers of education. So the people, the society get educated about what Hinduism is. Then they learn something. They can become proud of it. Hinduism, everything for us to become proud. In that case, each one of us can become a missionary, in the sense that of communicating wherever the occasion comes. So creating awareness is very important. Now Vishwa Hindu Parishad is organizing. Our Puja Swamiji has also initiated efforts called Acharya Sabha, in which the heads of different sampradayas are brought to one platform to discuss the problems that are concerning Hindus in general. Even though there may be differences as far as the beliefs are concerned, but still that they are all Hindus and they all have the basis in Veda. All of these are very common things. And some of the problems in India Hindus are facing right now, one is this, the temple administration is all taken over by the government. All the income, you think that you are giving, you are maybe contributing to Tirupati, but it goes ultimately, all that hundi and all that goes to government, and then they decide what to do with that money. And a lot of that money goes into charitable organizations, many of which are only converting Hindus. So you are in fact very often contributing for your own conversion. So this temple endowment is a big problem, with which Hindus have to work in India. And conversion is another important issue. How the Hindus are converted to Christianity, Muslim, but Islam, but Christianity to larger extent. Hindus are not aware of it. Basically, the people in India don't care. They don't care. We are so self-centered that we don't care what happens around us also. And therefore, to become aware that this is an important thing to know and then to work about. Therefore, our Swami also started this, what we call All India Movement for Seva. That we have to provide seva to those deprived people in the remote areas of India, in the tribal areas of India who are deprived. We should reach out to them and provide them what they need. And one of the important things that we can do is education, educating their children. Because facility of education in those remote areas is very limited. So we are opening Chhatralayas, meaning the hostels, what they call students' home or hostels, where children from tribal area are brought to where the schools are. And we take care of them. Right now there are some 90 some more Chhatralayas are there all over India. So more than 3,000 students are studying in them, and they are being taken care of. So educating them about our own culture, that at least makes them self-sufficient and prevents this further conversion also. That's side effect, but one of the desirable effects is that at least they will know what Hinduism is. They are raised in that. And
Swamiji, the thing you were saying about this, how the government's taking over the money, what we find in India is most people don't know how they can do anything about something like that. I mean, what can they do? Most people feel the political system is so corrupt that even if you get rid of one fellow, another fellow comes around equally corrupt. So it just seems like you hear there are a lot of cynicism.
first of all, this has to be challenged, whether it is in keeping with constitution or not. Because the minority shrines are not, the government doesn't do anything about Muslim or Christian or other shrines, nothing is done, they are minority. So majority here, in the name of that Hindus do not know how to administer their own shrines, and therefore the government is taking over. And in Tirupati, there may be an administrator who is a Christian, with nothing to do with Hinduism. At some point in time in Tirupati, people were infested by Christians. All their attendants were Christians, many of them, and they were passing all Christian leaflets, to people who are standing in line and things like that. Even there is a Sanskrit college, and the dean of that college used to be Christian, and so much against Hinduism. So that's how they are spreading in there, and so just become aware. There was a movement of there are 7 hills which are under Tirupati. They want to take over 6 hills from there to build churches there, right there in the neighborhood of Tirupati. Andhra Pradesh, I think, highest conversion in Andhra Pradesh, because this Reddy, Chief Minister was a Christian, and therefore he encouraged that conversion. Right now there is Congress. Congress also is pro-Christians also, and Muslims, pro-minorities, because that's the vote bank.
Swami, can you say something about prayer?
Can we say something about the prayer? Yeah, tomorrow we're going to say, but anyway,
Yeah, I know.
prayer is a very, very important practice. Prayer is seeking help. Seeking help from Ishvara. Recognizing that there are 2 aspects involved in success when we gain in any endeavor. One is our effort, that's called Purushartha, other is called Prarabdha or grace of Ishvara. So only together, Purushartha, the self-effort, and the grace of Ishvara or Daivam, these are required for any success. So prayer is for Daivam, meaning for seeking the grace of Ishvara. And as far as prayer is concerned, you can ask for what you want. Some people think that Swamiji, prayer means asking God. So I'm not, why should I ask God? So I don't perform prayer. No, there's nothing wrong in asking God. If you don't ask God, you ask somebody else anyway. Because we are needy by nature. So we need something, to fulfill our needs. There is nothing wrong in seeking the grace of Ishvara to fulfill our needs. And so prayer can be in any form. It doesn't have to be in Sanskrit. It can be in our own language. It doesn't have to be a stotra, it can be just our own language. We can just pray as we want. But fortunately in every language there are very beautiful prayers available. So use some of those prayers in in the language with which you are comfortable, so that when you are chanting or reciting prayer in your own mind, you are aware of the meaning also. And so, that way, prayer invokes the devotee in me, and I urge the Lord to help me. It is so whenever we need help, we seek help from Ishvara. And prayer is an excellent way of seeking help from Ishvara. Prayer should become a part of our daily routine actually. Should. You have a booklet called prayer. We'll give you a booklet. You have a booklet called prayer? Okay. Prayer can be also for, if you feel that I don't want anything, any material thing from Ishvara, we can ask for knowledge. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurte Mahyam Shriyam Medham Prajnam Prayacha Swaha. Swami added the Shriyam. Origin is Medham Prajnam Prayacha Swaha. So Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurte. My salutation to Bhagavan Dakshinamurti. Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayacha Swaha. Prayacha, please give me Medham, intelligence, Prajnam, knowledge or wisdom. So we want wisdom in our life. And for the wisdom, we require a certain kind of a mind, which is Antakarana Shuddhi, pure mind. So please give me that intelligence, purity of the mind, and give me the knowledge. And added on Shriyam, because most people are in need of wealth also. And therefore, Shriyam, Medham, particularly the time came when all this downturn was there and the people losing their jobs and incomes and things like that. So Swami had a Shriyam. Shriyam, Medham, Prajna, Prayacha Swaha. Please give us. But as far as we are, if you don't want Shri in terms of the material wealth, Shri can be in terms of spiritual wealth. So Shriyam, Medham, Prajna, Prayacha Swaha. Please give the spiritual wealth in terms of the good qualities. Medham, given the intelligence and the desire to know. And Prajna, please give wisdom or knowledge. So prayer can be of different kind, meaning for different things. But as far as student of Vedanta is concerned, the prayer can be of Medha and Prajna for intelligence and wisdom. Or prayer can be for anything, whatever you want. So Adi Shankaracharya's parents, they did not have a child until they were old. So they went to a Shiva temple, performed the penance for a long time, and Lord Shiva appeared in the dream and asked, what do you want? You want a son like you? So Lord Shiva said, okay, I'll be born as your son. So he was born as Adi Shankaracharya. That's what he said. So prayer can be for anything. There was a great a devotee. His name was Narayana Bhattadripad of the Guruvayur. So he was in Kerala, what do you call the Brahmins? They are the
Nambudri.
Nambudri. He was Nambudri, right. And he was suffering from paralysis. So he prayed to the Lord. And so he wrote Narayaniam. So there is a spot there in the Guruvayur temple where this Narayana Bhattadripad used to sit and address God. And Narayaniam is the abridged version of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, Narayaniam is 1,000 verses. And 100 sections, each one of 10 verses. And that he sang before, and he said that he was cured. So it can be for release from any pain, physical pain. And so prayer, Trambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarka bandhanan mrityormukshemam vrtat. Trambakam yajamahe, we worship Lord Shiva with the three eyes. Sugandhim pushtivardhanam, the one who is fragrant and one who gives the spiritual and physical nourishment. Urvarukamiva, like a urvaruka fruit, like a cucumber, a big cucumber, which grows on a veil, or on a creeper, and when it becomes ripe, it gets disconnected by itself. So urvarukamiva, O Lord, make my mind ripe and mature, so that it becomes disconnected from all the pain. Mrityoho, so mukshiyama bandhat, bandhanat mrityoho mukshiyama mritat. I want to be liberated from or saved from the mrityoho bandhanat, the bondage of death. Death can be physical death, death can be ignorance also. So please release me from ignorance. Mahamritat, and do not deviate me from immortality. So release me from mortality, from ignorance, from death. Lots of prayers are there. Even Gayatri Mantra also is a prayer. Jiyo yona prasodayat. May the Lord inspire my thoughts, elevate my thoughts.
Swamiji, if somebody, if you're praying for somebody else who is suffering, then what is the prayer?
You can chant Mrityunjaya Mantra also.
For them also, right?
Yeah, you can chant for somebody else also. Yeah.
Swamiji, yesterday you were talking about consumers and contributors, and in that context, I just we can expand a little bit more and talk about aim for Seva.
He's going to do it tomorrow.
Because some of our guests here only for today, and so that maybe we have the
As I said, our Pujya Swami Dayananji has founded a movement called Aim for Seva, All India Movement for Seva. All India Movement is called AIM. So AIM also is a good word, Aim for Seva, for the express purpose of reaching out to the underprivileged sections of the society, mainly the people who are in the rural areas and the remote areas and the tribal areas, who are sort of separated from the mainstream of the society. So as far as social and cultural and economic growth is concerned, they are not the beneficiaries of that, it has not reached them. Therefore, to bring them into the mainstream. The idea is to bring also the tribal people in the mainstream. And for that, the method is people helping people. So people who are privileged, people who are provided, they should reach out to people who are not as privileged themselves. And that's the purpose of this Aim for Seva. And this year, about 10-11 years have gone by, as I said, a lot of progress has been made in the 14 states of India. More than 90 Chhatralayas or students' homes have been built, and more than 3,000 students are taking advantage of that, and many of them are graduated, and very often we take care of them even after they graduate from high school. And so for supporting the Chhatralayas, naturally, fund is because the cost of supporting one student per year is about $450 for 1 year. So this year there is a special appeal for fundraising, and in 10 centers this fundraising program is going to go on, and they are going to present a cultural program at the end of that. A very good Bharatnatyam, a dancer, her name is Rukmini. She is coming with a troupe and presenting the live performances in 10 centers. One of the centers is Chicago, Peoria, and Milwaukee. So these three together will become one center. And idea is that each center raises $100,000. 10 centers raise $1 million plus expenses. So because the dancers come, their expenses will be there, transportation, the lodging, boarding, etc. will be there, and so. Therefore, so effort is initiated in these three places, and therefore there is an appeal to everybody to please contribute generously to this cause of Aim for Seva, All India Movement for Seva. Tomorrow evening. At what time are we meeting?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock where?
In the temple.
In the temple. Okay. So we are meeting tomorrow. Please do come there. We'll also show you a video of Aim for Seva, and the whole meeting will be followed by dinner also. So you are all requested to come and participate in this program. There are handouts also. You can do that. Yeah. you can just pass them on. The idea of a contributor versus a consumer, that's what we were talking last evening. One of the attitudes we can teach to our children. See, coming to the child, raising the children, listen, home, yourself. What's your name?
Bakul.
Bakul, okay. So one of the important values we can teach to our children is a value for being a giver. Be a contributor. Although child is a consumer, we all remain consumer until we stand on our own feet. But then we should become contributors. So therefore, one of the important values to reach out to the needy. A child can be taught to reach out to the needy. Reaching out doesn't have to be only in terms of money. It can be any way. When the child finds somebody needy, that he has at least this tendency and the value of reaching out, attitude. So attitude of contributor versus the consumer. But that's where the real happiness is. The real happiness is the happiness that comes from contribution. Happiness that comes from consumer is a short-lived happiness. And this one is a sustained happiness.
Swamiji, you are also personally involved in that chapter.
In Gujarat also, there are 7 Chhatralayas total, of which we are running 3 of them. There are 3 Chhatralayas and a fairly large number of students. In one Chhatralaya, was 60. I don't know what's the number right now.
Now
in
56,
Kakarapur.
but we are increased. 56 right now, and then this year we have more students to come.
So there is 60 some more.
Correct.
Another Chhatralaya is 100. Third one is 45. So close to about 200 children we are supporting. We are, in fact, and we have a very model Chhatralaya, which is a zero organic waste Chhatralaya has been built, eco-friendly Chhatralaya. Because we were donated land, about 3 acres of land, 2.5 to 3 acres of land was donated to us. So we had land, and therefore, first thing we came up was having a gosala, meaning cow shed. Right now there are 15 cows in there, They're growing, increasing in number, you see. And to use the cow dung, to be used as fuel. So we have the biogas plant where the human waste and the cow dung is all fed into the biogas plant. From that the fuel is generated with which they use in the kitchen. And the slurry that is left over in the biogas plant goes to a vermiculture plant. What is vermiculture plant? Where the earthworms, they consume this material and their excretion is a fertilizer. It's organic fertilizer. And so, that's how the fertilizer is produced. Also, all the organic waste from the kitchen as well as from the ground, like whatever land is there, part of it we are using for growing fruits, part of it for growing vegetables, and part of it for growing grass. And whatever organic waste is there, all of this goes into a pit. It's compost, and then it goes to the vermiculture and converted to fertilizer. So no waste, no organic waste. And another eco-friendly feature is all the street lights are powered by the solar panels. All the street lights. Third is the water conservation. So water recharge. All the water which comes in the monsoon in particular is all directed to a well, a recharge well, and then it is taken in, put in the ground. So some of these features we have. Swami was very happy when he saw this. He said, this is a model Chhatralaya. Other Chhatralayas also should imitate this, He's very happy. That's one of them. Second Chhatralaya, we have 100 students, and that's right in the So we are also running 2 schools. 2 government schools have been adopted by us. And there are Chhatralayas, so are those 2 schools. So last year we built a new building to house 100 children. And right, this year I was told that there already the number is 100, So many people want to come. And the school, which was adopted 10 years ago, we had adopted 15-20 children coming there. There are now more than 500 children. This year, the number has gone to more than 500 in the school. And a second school, which is not doing that well, this school is doing very well, other school is not doing that well, and we are trying to improve that. That also is Chhatralaya.
Some they have provided medical
Also.
and health care also.
A medical mobile van that goes into the villages and provides, medicine. That is also there.
Swami, how to, we learn Vedas, but how can we apply it to the workplace?
Well, the best text to study, to apply to the workplace is Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita teaches us some important values and attitudes. Are you there in the evening? This evening? Okay, so we'll discuss them. But basically, Bhagavad Gita, workplace is number 1, relations with other people. And attitude with reference to other people is of basically being helpful, basically being contributor, and we're interacting with the colleagues, interacting with the boss, interacting with the clients, with the suppliers and others. The basic value in interacting with the people is one of accepting people as they are, with their virtues and limitations. Nobody is perfect. So recognizing that everybody has difficulties, limitations, and so accepting, respecting people with their limitations, and not condemning because of the limitation, not condemning because of somebody may be angry, somebody may be greedy, you'll find all these people with this anger and greed and lust and jealousies is there everywhere. As best as possible, we be compassionate to these difficulties that people have. See, anger, greed, all of these arises from inner pain or difficulty. And therefore, as best as possible, not retaliate, but be compassionate, be forgiving, be tolerant as much as we can. At the same time, protecting yourself from their attacks. At the same time, that's also important. It's important to protect yourself also. So not allow others to hurt you. We have a value of not hurting others, but at the same time, we don't allow others to hurt us as best as we can. So in the workplace, in the interaction with people, the value is acceptance of people in our mind, respecting people and being compassionate. All these attitudes are in our own mind. We don't declare them. Like he says, that Lord Krishna says, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, that you are even-minded in success and failure. So suppose an owner of a business says, my employees, don't worry, I'm even-minded to profit and loss. Suppose you declare that, then nobody will make effort for profit. So some of these values are kept in your own mind. Your detachment is to be kept in your own mind. Your compassion kept in your own mind. But Your behavior will say that. At the same time, certain things are to be kept with yourself, not declared. Otherwise people may take advantage of you. In that sense, I am saying that have these attitudes and values, but then keep them to yourself. So in workplace, generally speaking, protecting ourselves and trying not to attack others.
Swami, like we have been taught since we have grown up that, try to make your line longer, don't try to rub others' line. But nowadays the world is so competitive. So in workplace sometimes, you have to do that and it's against our values. So, we get confused.
So what we say is that rather than shortening somebody's line, you make your line longer. This has been our teaching to them, you see. And but in the workplace there is a lot of jealousy, a lot of competition, and everybody trying to step over everybody else's, so that is true. That's where protection comes, that we have to learn to protect ourselves from this. And knowing fully well that that doesn't make people happy anyway. Jealousy and competition, etc., they are all right. They may perhaps give them some short-term advantage, but long-term happiness it cannot give. So you don't have to join that game, but then you have to perform well, for sure. We can be committed to a good performance. I don't want to be right at the cost of somebody else. At the same time, I should be doing well. And usually, it's not the competition that is rewarded, it's the performance that is rewarded. And so it's competition means I want to be better than somebody else. Rather than that, I want to be good. I compete with my own self and always seek to improve my own performance. That's what will count ultimately. That's what will count. But you have to sell yourself. Basically, what you are saying is that the workplace requires that you have to sell yourself. But if you have to do that, because otherwise nobody will take note of you. They should. Your performance should speak for yourself, but if it doesn't speak, then we may have to perhaps announce or declare, that this is what we have done. And it is true that it is against the value. At the same time, if practical situation calls for it, it's nothing, you are not being dishonest, but then at the same time, you have to let the people concerned know what you have done. That is true. Yes.
Swamiji, a lot of these new age thinkers like Dr. Wayne Dyer, they keep talking about the power of intention and radical manifestation, and they keep talking about essentially Tattvamasi and you are part of the ocean, so it is in you the ability to manifest as long as you are desiring God, things which are good. And then at the same time in Gita there is this thing that you have control over your action but the result is not in your hand. So how do these two go together?
Well, how do the result is not in your control, but then the result is contained in the action. If you perform your action well, with good intentions, then it will influence the result anyway. The idea is that you can manifest the goodness in you by being good, and that way you can also invoke the goodness in the universe. So you can make the universe favorable to you by being a good person. What Lord Krishna means is that perform your actions without the agenda of the result of the action. Perform the action for the love of the action and accept gracefully whatever the outcome comes. But when you put your best in the action, your right attitude in the action, then the result will reflect that. Because the law of karma is there, that the reaction is equal to equal to action. And so when you perform a good action, the result will be there. It may not be in the terms that you want, but it will be there. So, if you put in your best attitudes, best values, best intentions, then that will generate a similar result in terms of an inner satisfaction. So, all these intentions and attitudes and values are means of your inner growth, and that's how they will become means of your invocation of your inner goodness and inner fullness. By being good also invoke goodness in others. You follow? So that way make the universe also favorable to you by being genuinely good. By being genuinely loving and compassionate, you can invoke those values from the universe also.
मेरा भी एक सवाल है।
हाँ जी।
मेरे टाइम में और ये तो बोलने में कठिनाई आती है, इसलिए कि मेरे को ये आदमी था। जैसे आप गीता के बारे में कर्म की जो बात कर रहे थे, क्या इस युग में कर्म करना बिना आसक्ति के या बिना फल के हो सकता है? आदमी जो कोई कर्म करेगा वो ये तो चाहेगा ही चाहेगा ये फल मिल जाए, मैं अच्छा कर्म करूँगा। लेकिन अच्छी कर्म कहीं कर्म को जो है उन्होंने अपने भगवान की भक्ति से कहीं पर भी एक जगह भी ज़्यादा नहीं है, कहीं भी ज़्यादा है। क्या हम बिना फल और बिना आसक्ति के क्या हम रह सकते हैं? हम इस युग में गीता में कहीं पर भी हर जगह ये लिखा हुआ है कि अगर जो देखेंगे 9वें अध्याय में देखेंगे क्या श्लोक है, उसमें ये क्लियर कर रहे हैं कि अगर कोई पापी या दुराचारी या वैश्य या शूद्र अभी उस कैटेगरी में ही अगर
अपि चेत् सुदुराचारः भजते मामनन्य भाग साधुरेव समन्तव्य सम्यक् व्यवस्थितो हि सः क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शाश्वत शान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति मामिपार्थ व्यपाश्रित्र ये विश्व पाप योनयः स्त्रियो वैश्याः सदा शूद्राः तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्। ये आप कह रहे हैं, आप जो श्लोक कह रहे हैं ये है। आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं?
मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि वैसे तो शुरू से आखिर तक कर्म जो किया ना, कर्म हो या दूसरा कर्म हो, वो त्यागना की बात में हमारे बार तक कही है उन्होंने, पर उन्होंने कहा भाई लेकिन मेरी जो कुछ भी करो तो मेरे शरण में आ जाओ, कोई कर्म भी करोगे तो मेरे शरण में आ जाओ। अगर कर्म अगर सब अच्छा से अच्छा भी कर लोगे आप जो है तो ज़्यादा ज़्यादा आप स्वर्ग को जा सकते हो, लेकिन अगर मेरे को प्राप्त करना है तो मेरे को प्राप्त करो। कर्म भी अगर करो तो उनको सौंप दो आप, लेकिन इसमें हर जगह ये जरूर लिखा हुआ है आसक्ति के बिना और फल के बिना ही आपको प्राप्त करना है। कहीं कहीं एक आध अध्याय को छोड़ करके हर अध्याय में कहीं ना कहीं ये
भगवान बोलते हैं कि भाई आप कुछ निष्काम बनिए। भाई
निष्काम
आपको तो बहुत कुछ दिया गया है, भगवान ने दिया है। हमको लगता है हमारे पास कुछ नहीं है, लेकिन भगवान हमको बहुत कुछ दिया है, इसलिए वापस देने का है। जितना हम ज़्यादा मांगेंगे उतना हम ज़्यादा ऋणी बनेंगे। बहुत ऋण हमारे ऊपर हो गया है, तो इसलिए बोलते हैं कर्म करते समय देते जाओ तो आपका ऋण कुछ कम होगा।
कोई भी समस्या हल भी पर एक बार लंबा हो जाएगा, सब लोग कोई जाएंगे इसलिए ठीक नहीं है, तो समझ में नहीं आता तो कभी नहीं सकता।
इससे आसक्ति वगैरह કેવી રીતે કર્મ કરી શકાય, શક્ય છે?
बिना आसक्ति कर्म हो सकता है। आप प्रेम से कर्म कीजिए। जो कर्म आपको पसंद है, जैसे किसी को गार्डनिंग बहुत पसंद है तो आराम प्रेम से कीजिए, कर्म का आनंद लीजिए। वो कहते हैं भगवान कहते हैं कर्म का आनंद लीजिए। कर्म फल का में से आनंद प्राप्त करने की अपेक्षा रखने के बजाय कर्म में से आनंद लीजिए। फिर जो भी कर्म फल मिलेगा उसको स्वीकार कर लीजिए।
The home study book, Puja Swami in the 12th chapter.
Which chapter are you doing in the Bhagavad Gita?
6th chapter.
6th chapter. Okay.
He talks about Vishwarupa Upasana.
11th chapter.
That's 11th. 12th is
He's
not
talking about
in
something
12th chapter.
12th chapter.
He mentions it, Vishwarupa Upasana. Can you elaborate what that means, Upasana?
Upasana means worship. एवं सतत युक्ताये भक्तास्त्वाम परिपासते इचाप्यक्षरम अव्यक्तम तेषाम. So Arjuna is asking, see the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is called Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, where Lord Krishna showed his cosmic form. And conclusion of the chapter was Mat Karmakrit, Mat Paramaha, Mat Bhaktaha, Sangavarjitaha, Nirvairaha, Sarvabhuteshu, Yas Samameti Pandava. So how to worship Bhagavan? Mat Karmakrit, whatever karma you perform them for my sake. Mat Paramaha, I must be the ultimate goal in your life. Mat Bhaktaha, your love should be also for me, be devoted to me. Sangha Varjitaha, give up your attachment to the worldly things. Nirvairaha, and become free from all enmity. Become free from enmity as well as attachment. And direct your mind, intellect and soul to me. So karma you perform with your body, perform them for me. The goal is entertained by buddhi, that buddhi also be focused, directed to me. The heart loves that also for me. Meaning that your own entire being, let it be centered upon me. That's called upasana. So that's the aim. In this manner, satata yuktaha. So those who are devoted to you constantly, at all places, at all the times. Now, the Vishwarupa or the cosmic form is presented for meditation. If you can meditate upon the Ishvara, the cosmic form. The 10th chapter also describes the vibhutis or the glories of the Lord for meditation purposes. 11th chapter also is for meditation, if you like. The whole cosmos is the manifestation of Ishvara.
So is that thinking about in the
Visualizing that form in your mind. Upasana means mental worship, or visualizing that form of Ishvara in your mind. Now, of course, we are given our own murtis, etc., for visualization. But those days, the idol worship was not there, and worship was done through devatas or through the nature's orders. Worship of Ishvara was done.
Just a question I read in another book, so it's not my question. If Ishvara is all-knowing, then do we have a free will? Because free will means that I'm making a choice for the future. But Ishvara is all-knowing, he already knows the future, so am I really making a choice of my own, or it's just I'm following Ishvara?
Well, Ishvara is all-knowing, which means that he knows all possibility of choices. You make choice and all possibilities are all known by Ishvara, but you make a choice in one of those possibilities. So Ishvara is all-powerful, means that you don't transcend his power. But within that, whatever possibilities are there that you have, and so you can make choice among the possibilities available to you. That much freedom you have.
The question presupposes that the future is predetermined and therefore you don't have a choice. I mean, that seems to be an implication.
It's not about predetermination. It's about, since Ishvara is all-knowing, that means he already knows
what's going to happen.
What's going to happen.
Predetermined, yeah.
So which means that, am I really
Yeah, I mean that if it is like decided what will happen, then you don't have choice.
It's not decided what will happen. That much freedom is given to you. What will happen will be known to him as it happens.
And what will happen will not be necessarily what we think is going to happen. That's the understanding.
Yeah, what will happen according to the laws.
modern day scientific terminology, you can see it's a very, very complex algorithm. We don't know what that algorithm is, and it takes input from so many different sources, prarabdha and purushartha and everything, and then the result will be something. And so it's totally, the Ishvara is detached from that. It is, so the algorithm itself is Ishvara.
Yeah,
No, but the question is very clever here. And the question is very, very clever question. And if Ishvara is all powerful, then do you really have any power? If Ishvara is all knowing, do you really have any knowledge? But Ishvara's, my knowledge also is included in Ishvara's knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the concept of
My
Ishvara.
power also is included in the Ishvara's power. So we call it my power, but it is actually Ishvara's power. Ultimately, in as much as the Jiva is not the ultimate reality, what that is Ishvara, and therefore everything is in order. That I am a separate being is my own notion. Ultimately, separation is only due to ignorance.
I think that answers the question. Purushartha is also part of Ishvara's. It's not separate.
Legal is also.
Yesterday you talked about Warren Buffett being a mature person, investor. So in Karma Yoga, we, Swamiji says that Karma Yogi is the one who accepts the Lord, God as the giver of the results, or God as. So in this case, even though Warren Buffett may be mature, can we say he's a Karma Yogi, or he's just a mature person realizing that he wanted to contribute back to the world? How do we take this maturity?
Well, the maturity manifests as a being contributor, as a contribution. So, in a way, Karma Yoga is involved there. If the karma is performed as an act of contribution, then yoga is involved there. But the fact that he contributes generously, such generosity he has, that he lives a simple life, he lives with a minimum demand. That's what I mean by maturity there. Whether he is a believer of Ishvara or not, or he performs actions, worship, we do not know. But definitely this is very much there. In generosity and simplicity. So they used to say, simple living and high thinking. He seems to demonstrate that. Yes, sir.
We have a lot of rituals. Whenever we pray, each god has different kind of rituals. Are we supposed to follow up? Because I feel like guilty if I don't know any ritual. Is there any shortcut?
Yes.
Hours and hours, he sees the rituals going on and on.
You see, basically ritual provides a structure. For doing anything properly, there must be structure of doing it. You will travel in an aeroplane, there is structure. How you should book your ticket, get your boarding pass done, go there, get your luggage checked, go to security. Then alone, when there is structure, then things take place in a systematic manner. Similarly, a structure is, what is the ritual? A structure provided for expression of our devotion or attitude. How to express our devotion? For that a structure is provided. Most important is that there are two things, spirit and the form. So ritual represents the form with which there is a spirit of devotion. If you have the devotion, then if you express it in a different form, that should be all right. More important is the spirit and the devotion. But sometimes if devotion is not there, then by following this form, you can slowly cultivate devotion. So spirit and form, both are there. If the spirit is there, form is not important. But if the form is there, spirit can come. Meaning that if you follow the ritual, then in the course of time, the devotion also can be discovered. Rituals can be very simple and very complicated also. They can go on for hours together also. They can be done in 10 minutes also. There are 16 upachara, 16 steps puja is there. There are panchovachara, 5-step puja also is there. 64 upacharas are also there. And so you can make your ritual as elaborate as you can. So that you worship Ishvara in an elaborate manner. The idea is that you want to express your love and devotion. So when you are devoted, you want to, you see, for example, a lot of improvisations are also there. Like her granddaughter says, oh, you are going to perform puja of Swamiji. I have to make this crown was made by her, for example, Somebody makes a mala. So it is your devotion you want to offer. How do you do that? So you yourself make it as elaborate as you can. When we are inviting our friends, for dinner, we just want to treat them well. Then you make so many items, After you don't require so much thing for, appeasing hunger. Only rice and chapati and dal, sabji may be okay. But you have 16 different items there. For what reason? Just to express your love for them. You follow what I am saying? Similarly, elaboration ritual is to express our love for Ishvara, but it can be simple. If in simple not because you don't care to do more things, but simple because you can express your love in a simple way. But rituals can be simple, they can be elaborate both ways.
The reason I asked because we have a temple here and we got about 8 or 9 deities there. And if I pray one God, I feel guilty. I must pray him too because he's just next to him. All are,
Okay. Yeah, so many forms are there. That's also a good question. That so many deities are there. Who should I worship? You worship your Devata.
Right.
Idea is to respect others and give most importance to the deity of your choice. So therefore, our Adi Shankaracharya ji created this Panchopachara, worshipping 5 devatas. Now of course there are so many deities, but in those days, say 1200 years ago, there were in India mainly 5 or 6 devatas were worshipped. Shiva, Shakti, Ganesha, Narayana, Surya. And then 6th one is Murugan or Kartikeya. And so, depending upon who is your chosen deity, place them in the center. Other devatas are placed on the corner. So other devatas get also their worship, but elaborate worship is done to the deity of your choice. So similarly, if Lord Krishna is your Ishta Devata, you can perform more elaborate puja or worship for him, for the Devata. Others also you can offer at least your respect. So that way it is good for us also, that we respect all the Devatas, while having place in our heart for one Devata.
So about the Manas Puja, there is no rituals actually, Manas Puja. What is good, rituals or Manas Puja?
So Manas Puja is ritual done mentally.
Mentally.
So what you are doing outwardly is also done mentally. That also is good for meditation. So Manas Puja can be a good form of meditation. It's good. And it's quite possible that if you are mature enough, you can replace outer puja by mental puja. You can do that. You need not perform the outer puja also. You perform the Manas Puja. Because it's more, your mind is more focused when you're doing it mentally. So it's more effective.
So maybe the higher concept of God, there is no form. So why are we not introduced to that concept?
It's only because the mind has difficulty with formless. To be able to worship or meditate on the formless, you require a mind that has gained a great maturity, purity and concentration. When there is not there, you cannot meditate upon the formless. So forms are given, keeping in mind a present state of mind. As you grow in your concentration and purity, the forms will drop off and you will be able to then contemplate upon the formless. So a child, you don't give all the, to a child just give milk and then only some mashed food, depending on the capacity of the child. You don't give it all the, the payasam and stuff like that because it's not yet ready to digest that. As the digestive power grows, you can feed the child with more and more, richer food. Ultimately, child eats rich food when it grows up. But when it develops the capacity to eat the rich food. So we have to develop capacity to worship the formless. Yes, sir.
Earlier we were doing a lot of chanting, and they sounded good, it felt good, but I didn't understand any of it. I couldn't even pronounce some of them. I enjoyed the whole ritual, but I don't think I got the meaning of it.
Yes.
What's the best stance? I just enjoyed the chanting and looked at the meaning, as I saw it. Is there a different way to get more out of it? Because I do this maybe once every year.
Right.
I don't quite know this.
No, I understand. It is all done in Sanskrit language, and right now we are sort of divorced from the language. There was a time when people were very familiar with the language, that this form of worship was very good. Now we have very little knowledge of the language, and therefore doing rituals in Sanskrit is not very effective. I must admit that. Ideally,
it sounded great. And
it sounds great,
yes.
yes. Ideally, this should be translated into our own language. These verses should be translated into our own language. We did it for two verses, for Shiva Puja and for Rama Puja. We have books where these verses are translated into equivalent Gujarati verse form. So you can recite. You can recite that. If something like that is done, then people will understand what they are doing. And I appreciate that.
The whole group chanting felt good. Even if I didn't,
yes.
it kind of, you felt
Yes.
good about it, and at least I try to enjoy that part. But
Sanskrit has its own beauty. So Sanskrit chanting has its own effect. And when it's chanted in group, it is particularly very effective.
Many pujas or many things you don't understand, maybe little bit of it. Still it is good to hear that. Like lots of stuff we hear and we love it to hear that. But we don't know exact meaning. Still it give us it gives us pleasure actually. Means we feel very good. But is it without knowingly, there is no knowledge about this, is it good or not?
Still it is good. Like a lot of Vedic chanting. We may not understand the meaning of that. But chanting itself has its own effect. Yes.
What kind of
Effect on your whole personality. Which are in your mind, on vibrations. That is why the Vedic, the children who are introduced to Vedic chanting from a young age of 6, 7, 8 years, by the time they are 15, 20, they learn the whole Veda, they recite that, may not understand the meaning. So you can see that luster on their face, that shows. Because the Vedic chanting creates certain vibrations, which has effect on your body as well as the mind.
And if any mistake by chanting, sometimes.
Any mistake, you will be punished.
Sometimes.
That's why you have the Kshamapana mantras.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we
At the end of the puja, we recite these shlokas. Avahanam na janami visarjanam, puja vidhim na janami, shamasva Parameshwara. Oh Parameshwara, please pardon me, because I don't know how to invoke you, I don't know how to I don't know how to conclude, I don't know the puja vidhi, and so with all mantrahinam, kriyahinam, bhaktihinam, sureshwara, yat pujitam maya deva, tadas paripurnam tadastute. That there is defect in mantra and kriya and everywhere, all the defects are there, oh Lord, please pardon. So it is customary to seek pardon. Yadaksharam padam prashtam matrahinam yad bhavet tatsaram kshamyatam deva paripur, So, mantrahinam, kriyahinam, or yadaksharam, in word, in letter, in the sentence, there may be mistakes, so please pardon me. Tatsarvam kshamyatam deva prasida Parameshwara, like that.
A lot of scientific studies being done on chanting. They find that a recent discovery of the neuroplasticity of the brain. So chanting these ancient chants helps to make the brain more flexible, learn new neural wirings, so which can help a person. Not only they applied for different reasons, but not only to keep your brain active, but also you can keep yourself young and memory, so they do studies. All these ancient chants.
I see. Well, a lot of experiments are conducted, were conducted and are being conducted by people to determine the effect of the recitals, effect of the homa also, as to what effect it produces, what effect the chanting produces. You're right. Our Maharshi Maheshwari used to do that kind of research. In India, Gayatri Parivar is doing that in Haridwar, and so such research is being done.
I think from our perspective, it all comes down to Shraddha. If we have Shraddha, then maybe we don't have to look at the scientific aspects.
But the fact remains, in some ways it helps you. It helps your mind, helps your personality, helps your body. So then scientists tell you the mechanism, how it helps. We say it creates vibrations and helps you, but scientists can tell you in what way actually it works. So that's good. It complements, what we believe. We have Shraddha, and that is supported by the discoveries.
This they have clearly demonstrated in water, the Kumbha, they do this Udakashanti, and there are some mantras when they chant. The water is normally not polarized. After the certain amount of chant they have tested, it becomes polarized. This positive, negative charge, dipoles, they call it, they are randomly oriented. It's unpolarized water as a whole. After the chants, they all align themselves in one direction, they get polarized. So there is a physical effect.
Some Japanese people have demonstrated
Yes,
this.
Japanese also did. That's again.
So then you take that as a tirtha, or you do the prokshana for purification. That water.
So traditionally, when a puja is performed, then normally bathing is done, to the Lord. It's called Abhisheka, with recital of mantras. And then a little bit of that water we sip as a prasad. The idea is, as Prasad is saying here, is that when you recite these mantras effect on the water. Recently Japanese people also demonstrated as to how the water with mantra and without the mantra shows different characteristics. So these recitals, all the rituals have effect. That's why what is offered as Naivedya becomes prasad, So these things do have effect upon the whole environment also.
One of the example is Satyanarayana Kathano Prasad, zero.
Always tastes good.
Only during the puja it tastes good, otherwise it's not good.
Actually, when you're making a lot
Same
of
way,
ladies will
doesn't
tell you,
matter.
when you're making food as prasad, it
Always.
comes out right.
That's
You
true.
don't make, but that's also coming from your attitude. That's where it starts. Never get
This
it.
Japanese research on water, it's not even just even having a good intention, because they say that the body is made up of 60%, more than 60% water. So any thought that we have, if the thought is of good intention, then we affect our own body in a positive way. And that's also done by the same group. They just write a good word on a piece of paper and stick it on a water bottle, and then they produce the good crystals. But if you put a bad word like I hate you or an angry tone and write it on a paper and put it on a glass of water, it produces a crystal which is very, it doesn't look good. Since our body is made of water, every thought that we have has an influence on our body.
That's interesting.
We know these things, or we told these things, but when the scientific evidence comes, we say, aha. So we are just not being told a story. This is really
Yeah, that's a verification, It's
Yeah,
always
it's a
good.
verification.
Shraddhavan labhate jnana. When you have Shraddha, then you gain the knowledge. So that's how this one creates also, yeah. Meditates.
Swamiji, in Gita, Krishna said that if your mind is pure, I am the thought. So, but most of the time we have combination of all these sattva, rajo and tamo gunas. So how to maximize the sattva guna so that our mind will be pure most of the time in our day-to-day life?
That's the purpose of these attitudes. More we try to maintain good attitudes, more sattvic our mind will be. All these attitudes and values are based on sattva. So therefore, trying to have those right intentions, right attitudes will make the mind sattvic. Then of course all your prayers and chanting and thinking and contemplation, all this helps make the mind sattvic.
Certain days you feel more sattva will be dominating and then you will be doing more of the spiritual activities. But certain days if you observe in the life, you'll be more of rajas or tamas kind of thing. So
that's the nature of mind. According to past karma, the mind becomes sattvic, rajas, tamas. But by doing new karma, we can, we can make it more sattvic. So what's the time?
12. I think we can.
12 o'clock? No, you just
Some
ask your
people-
host.
Some people came kind of late. Yeah, do pranam. Some of you who came.
Anybody has any questions?
Swamiji, what is the effect of meditation in daily?
What's the effect of meditation? Same thing. Meditation means maintaining a certain thought flow in our mind. Basically, maintaining a thought flow which is centered upon Ishvara. So Ishvara is pavitranam pavitram, means is pure. He is purifier of all purifiers. Therefore, thinking about Ishvara purifies our mind. So meditation has the effect of calming the mind, healing the mind, purifying the mind.
I do say. Hari Om.